I've seen many black professionals enter predominantly white corporate environments carrying a destructive belief they need to work 3 times harder just to be considered half as good as their white colleagues. This mindset, while understandable given the reality of structural racism, is a psychological trap that destroys personal power before the first meeting even begins. The truth few want to hear is that respect has never been earned through desperate effort to prove worth. Respect is commanded through absolute clarity about who you are and through strategic actions that make your presence undeniable. I didn't beg for respect from segregationists. I didn't try to convince racists that black people deserve dignity. I built an authority so solid that even my fiercest enemies were forced to recognize my presence as unavoidable. And I did this in a country where being black could mean literal death for daring to occupy certain spaces. If I managed to transform the power dynamics of an entire nation using specific principles of personal development, these same principles work in any professional environment where you are a minority. The problem isn't that black professionals aren't competent enough. The problem is that most have never learned to differentiate between technical competence and presence that commands respect. You can be the best professional in the room and still be treated as invisible if you don't understand how emotional mastery, strategic integrity, and silent leadership work in practice. I mastered these principles with a precision that few leaders in any field can achieve. And each of these principles can be learned, cultivated, and applied in your work environment starting today. Martin Luther King built his authority on a principle that few understand even today. Genuine respect is never begged for. It's earned through absolute clarity about who you truly are. That man understood something profound about human psychology and about power dynamics in spaces where you represent a visible minority. The first true battle doesn't happen in the meeting room, doesn't happen in front of your colleagues or your superior. The first true battle happens within yourself in the solitary moment when you need to recognize a fundamental truth. Your presence in that space isn't a favor someone is granting you. It's a right earned by your own competence. The corporate system, power structures, organizational hierarchies may not have been built with you in mind. This fact is undeniable. But you didn't ask permission to enter through doors that were locked. You rebuilt those doors with your own merit, with your skills, with your dedication, with your ability to deliver results that no one could ignore. King said something powerful. No one can ride your back unless you bend over. And this truth begins exactly at the moment when you stand before the mirror and recognize your true value before seeking any external validation. Most people carry an internal contradiction that destroys them before they even begin. They enter predominantly white environments, already apologizing for their own existence, already diminishing themselves, already accepting a secondary role that no one forced them to assume. This posture of anticipated inferiority wasn't imposed by decree. It was internalized through years of social conditioning. But the moment you decide to occupy your space with dignity, the moment you stop asking permission to exist and simply exist with full awareness of your value, everything changes. Your physical posture changes. The way you enter a room changes. The tone of your voice when you speak changes. The people around you pick up on this change immediately because human beings are instinctive creatures who read signals of power and authority before they even process words. You can have the same position, the same responsibilities, but if you enter an environment believing you need to prove you deserve to be there, you've already lost the psychological battle. Respect begins when you internalize that your place was earned, not granted, and that you owe no one an explanation for your presence. But this internal transformation doesn't happen through empty affirmations or self-deception. It happens when you do the hard work of reconciling your self-image with your objective reality. You need to look at your trajectory with brutal honesty. You need to recognize the barriers you overcame, the qualifications you earned, the results you delivered, not to feed ego, but to build a solid foundation of self-knowledge that no one can shake. King faced opponents who wanted to destroy him daily, but his confidence didn't come from arrogance. It came from a deep understanding of the legitimacy of his mission and his ability to execute it. When you finally achieve this internal clarity about who you are and about the value you bring, something interesting happens in the environment around you. the people around you begin to notice a difference, even if they can't articulate exactly what changed. The emotional maturity that Martin Luther King demonstrated under intense pressure wasn't a natural gift he was born with. It was a skill deliberately cultivated over years. That man knew that in spaces where you are a minority, microaggressions will come. Veiled comments about your competence will come. Looks that question whether you really deserve to be in that position will come. This reality doesn't change because you wish it would change. What changes is how you respond to this reality. True respect begins to solidify the moment you develop the capacity to not react emotionally to every provocation, but to respond strategically. Many people confuse this posture with passivity or with swallowing disrespect. It's not that. It's something much more sophisticated and much more powerful. It's the ability to choose your battles wisely, to differentiate between a provocation that deserves direct confrontation and one that deserves only calculated indifference. King faced death threats every day. People literally promised to kill him and his family, but he maintained his unshakable dignity because his power came from an internal source that no one could touch. Developing emotional regulation in a hostile environment doesn't mean pretending the aggressions don't exist. It means building a psychological fortress so solid that these aggressions can't penetrate to your core. You observe them, you process them, you rationally decide how to handle each situation, but you never allow them to control your emotions or dictate your actions. This level of internal control projects an authority that intimidates more than any aggressive confrontation. People respect those they cannot destabilize. They may try to provoke you once, twice, 3 times, but when they realize you remain centered, that you respond with calculated calm instead of emotional explosions, they stop trying. The professional who loses composure at every questionable comment becomes predictable. People learn exactly which buttons to push to knock you off your axis. But the professional who maintains inner peace even under pressure becomes unpredictable and therefore respectable. No one knows how to destabilize them because they don't allow themselves to be destabilized. This silent strength creates a psychological space around you that people instinctively respect. They may not like you, may disagree with you, but they think twice before disrespecting you directly because they know you won't react the way they expect. But inner mastery without technical competence is just empty philosophy. King wasn't respected only for his serenity under pressure. He was respected because he articulated his ideas with a precision that left his opponents without arguments. True transformation happens at the convergence point between emotional control and professional excellence. This convergence point is where respect stops being a possibility and becomes an inevitability. King wasn't admired only for his just cause or his moral courage. He was respected for the impeccable way he articulated each argument, for the surgical precision with which he dismantled counter-arguments, for the strategic execution of every action he planned. In a work environment where you are a visible minority, your technical excellence needs to be absolutely unquestionable. Not because you have something to prove to people who carry prejudices. That mentality is already defeated. You pursue excellence because undeniable competence shuts the mouth of mediocrity and silences criticism before it's even vocalized. Concrete results have a universal language that transcends race, gender, or any other category. Numbers don't lie. Well-executed projects need no justification. Consistently superior deliveries create a reputation that speaks louder than any prejudice whispered in the hallways. The professional who becomes a reference in what they do, who solves complex problems others avoid, who delivers creative solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. That professional transforms respect from optional to mandatory. People may carry their internal biases, may have their limiting beliefs about capacity based on race, but they cannot deny tangible results that appear repeatedly. You command respect the moment you become indispensable, not for your racial identity, but for your measurable contribution to collective success. And therein lies a liberating paradox that few people understand. You stop being seen as the competent black professional and begin to be recognized simply as the exceptional professional who happens to be black. This subtle distinction carries enormous weight. In the first case, your race defines your competence. In the second case, your competence defines your professional identity, and your race becomes just one aspect of your person, not the lens through which all your work is filtered. But this excellence cannot be performative or superficial. Making noise about your achievements or constant self-promotion doesn't work. This type of behavior generates distrust and reinforces negative stereotypes. The excellence that generates true respect is that which manifests consistently in daily work and small decisions, an attention to detail and the ability to anticipate problems and propose solutions before anyone needs to ask. It's the type of competence that makes people naturally seek your opinion, that makes your name be mentioned in rooms where you're not present, that makes managers defend your promotion because they know your contribution is undeniable. King knew that being morally right wasn't enough. It was necessary to present arguments so solid that even ideological adversaries were forced to recognize their validity. Similarly, in the corporate environment, working hard isn't enough. You need to work with strategic intelligence, generating visible impact and creating a track record of success that no one can question. But technical excellence without moral integrity is a castle built on sand. True professional authority requires another fundamental layer. This fundamental layer is absolute integrity between what you say and what you do. Martin Luther King had fierce enemies, people who dedicated their entire lives to trying to destroy him. But even his fiercest opponents were forced to recognize his unwavering integrity. He didn't negotiate his principles for political convenience. He didn't change his speech depending on the audience. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep just to gain temporary approval. This absolute coherence built a reputation that transcended any personal attack. People could violently disagree with his positions, but they couldn't accuse him of dishonesty or opportunism. In your work environment, lasting respect operates by the same principle. Empty self-promotion may generate momentary attention, but consistent integrity builds permanent authority. You become respectable the moment your words gain real weight, the moment people know that if you promised a delivery, that delivery will happen. If you said you'll take responsibility for a difficult project, you actually take it and don't disappear at the first difficulty. If you pointed out a problem in a meeting, you also bring viable solutions instead of just criticizing others' work. This reliability transforms your presence in the environment. People begin to value your contributions because they know you don't speak just to speak. Integrity also means making difficult decisions that may not be popular in the moment but are right in the long term. It means being the dissenting voice in a room full of superficial agreement about a clearly misguided strategy. It means not condoning questionable practices just to be socially accepted by the group. King deeply understood that integration without dignity was worth absolutely nothing. He could have negotiated easier deals, could have accepted gradual changes that wouldn't disturb the established system so much, but he knew those moral compromises would destroy the very essence of the struggle. Similarly, you need to protect your professional integrity fiercely, even if it means being less popular at certain times. The professional who sells themselves for convenience may gain some temporary allies, but loses permanent respect. People observe. They see who changes their opinion depending on who's in the room. They notice who takes credit for others' work. They perceive who says one thing in private and another in public. And once you lose moral credibility, no matter how technically competent you are, your power of influence disappears. No one trusts someone who doesn't demonstrate solid principles. But the professional who keeps their word, who defends their convictions with respect but without wavering, who chooses to do right even under pressure, that professional builds a reputation that becomes their most valuable asset. Your integrity is literally your most precious capital in any professional environment. You can lose a project, can lose a promotion, can even lose a job, but if you keep your integrity intact, you'll rebuild your career elsewhere. But if you compromise your integrity for short-term gains, you destroy something that takes years to rebuild. King knew this viscerally. He could have saved his own life by making moral concessions, but he chose to preserve his integrity even knowing the risks. Obviously, the corporate context doesn't involve life-threatening risks, but the principle remains valid. Protecting your integrity is protecting your ability to lead and influence long-term. And true leadership doesn't come from imposed titles. It comes from something much more subtle and powerful. This true leadership emerges from influence earned through consistent actions, not from formal authority granted by titles. King led massive crowds, but his ability to influence masses began in small circles, in individual conversations, in everyday actions that demonstrated his character before he even spoke a word. In a predominantly white professional environment, you command respect the moment you become the person others naturally turn to. Not because you self-promoted incessantly, but because you demonstrated practical wisdom in your actions repeatedly. Informal leadership is the most powerful form of leadership because it doesn't depend on hierarchical validation. No one needs to give you permission to help a colleague who's struggling with a project. No one needs to authorize you to solve problems others ignore out of laziness or incompetence. No one needs to approve your decision to elevate the level of conversations by contributing insights no one else brought to the table. These actions create a type of authority that corporate titles can't buy. People begin to listen with genuine attention every time you speak because they've learned that your contributions add real value. This process of building influence happens organically, but not accidentally. You need to be intentional about how you contribute to the environment. The professional who only does their individual work exceptionally gains personal respect, but the professional who elevates the performance of people around them, who shares knowledge without pettiness, who solves collective problems without expecting public recognition, that professional becomes essential to the group dynamic. People begin to value your presence not just for your technical work, but for how you improve the entire environment. King didn't need to shout to be heard. His voice carried weight because his actions built credibility over time. Similarly, you don't need to dominate every meeting or speak louder than everyone else to have influence. You need to speak less, but with more substance. You need to choose your moments of contribution wisely. You need to be the person who brings clarity to confused discussions, who points out solutions to problems others only complain about, who maintains collective focus on true objectives even in the face of internal political distractions. This kind of silent leadership transforms the power dynamic in the environment because it changes people's perception of who really matters. Corporate titles indicate formal position, but real influence comes from those who add consistent value. You may not have the highest position in the hierarchy, but if you're the person everyone consults before making important decisions, if you're the name that comes up in conversations even in your absence, if your opinion carries enough weight to change strategic directions, you lead, in fact. And this type of earned leadership is much more solid than imposed authority because no one can take it from you through corporate reorganizations or internal political changes. But individual leadership, however powerful it may be, carries a fundamental limitation if you don't see beyond your own growth. This limitation reveals itself the moment you realize that purely individual growth without collective consciousness is just superficial success. Martin Luther King didn't dedicate his entire life fighting to be accepted within a racist system. He dedicated his life to transforming the system itself. This distinction is absolutely crucial to understanding the deepest level of respect you can achieve in any professional environment. Initial respect comes from your personal competence. Intermediate respect comes from your integrity and informal leadership. But final respect, the respect that transcends your individual presence and creates lasting impact, comes from your ability to redefine what's possible within that space. You reach this level the moment you stop simply adapting to the limited expectations the environment imposes on you. Adaptation is survival. Transformation is power. The Black professional who grows so much within the organization that their voice shapes strategic decisions, who has real authority to influence hiring and promotion policies, who becomes the bridge between leadership and realities they've never experienced. That professional isn't just occupying space. They're redefining the rules of how that space functions for everyone who will come after them. King knew deeply that his individual struggle to sit at the front of the bus meant nothing if segregation continued to exist on buses. Personal victory without systemic transformation is just successful conformism. Similarly, you need to understand that your individual professional growth carries a responsibility much greater than just your personal success. Every door you open for yourself can become a permanently open door for other Black professionals who will face the same hostile environments you faced. Every pattern you break, every promotion you earn, every space of power you occupy, all of this creates precedents that make the path easier for the next generation. But systemic transformation doesn't happen through empty speeches about diversity or superficial inclusion. It happens through concrete action. You transform the system the moment you use your position of influence to hire other talented Black professionals who wouldn't have opportunity without your intervention. You transform the system the moment you question evaluation processes that perpetuate unconscious biases. You transform the system the moment you become a mentor to younger professionals, sharing not just technical knowledge, but the political navigation strategies you learned painfully over the years. This mentality of collective transformation doesn't contradict your pursuit of individual excellence. In fact, it amplifies your impact. You become living proof that Black excellence isn't a statistical exception, it's potential waiting for opportunity. Every Black professional you help grow, every barrier you tear down, every toxic norm you successfully challenge, all of this multiplies your legacy far beyond what your individual achievements could ever reach. King understood that true leadership isn't about elevating yourself, it's about elevating the entire community through your own growth. The respect you build through this complete journey, deep self-knowledge, emotional mastery, unquestionable technical excellence, unwavering integrity, silent leadership, and transformative vision, this respect transcends any specific environment. It becomes part of your identity, something you carry regardless of where you are or who you're working with. And perhaps the most powerful aspect of this transformation is realizing that you weren't just earning respect from others. You were fundamentally learning to respect yourself in a way that no one can ever take from you. Martin Luther King faced death threats daily and never allowed those obstacles to define his value or limit his ability to lead. The question you need to answer now with brutal honesty is, what excuse are you still using to not occupy your space with the dignity you deserve? What fear is preventing you from developing the emotional mastery necessary to remain unshakable in the face of microaggressions? What conformism is making you accept mediocrity in your own performance instead of pursuing the non-negotiable excellence that shuts the mouth of any critic? Will you continue asking permission to exist in spaces you earned through your own merit, or will you finally internalize that your presence is legitimate? Will you react emotionally to every provocation, or will you develop strategic wisdom to choose your battles? Will you work only for your individual success, or will you use your position to transform the system and open doors for those who come after? King cultivated these principles through years of deliberate internal work. You have the same capacity. The only difference between you now and the version that commands natural respect is the decision to begin this work today. If this content provoked real reflection, subscribe to this channel and activate notifications to continue your development in personal leadership and emotional maturity.